Originally, Candace Owens, I've been following her for a long time. I remember when she first appeared really on kind of this alternative internet commentary space. Back then, Dave Rubin was kind of starting his show. He had just begun it, doing his kind of journey to the right and documenting it by having all these people come in, guys like Milo Yiannopoulos and things for this thing called Gamergate. And all this stuff was kind of starting to blow up. And Candace Owens was a leftist. She was a leftist who was working on something called Social Autopsy. It was this kind of service that was supposed to stop internet bullying by basically sounded like doxing people, more or less, collecting all of their information, that kind of thing. She had raised money for it, I think on Kickstarter and things. And a lot of people turned on her. I guess she said some things that weren't leftist, and people started to try to dox her. And this kind of made her take her journey to the right. And right from the beginning, she was pretty clearly going to be a rising star. She's somebody who has a lot of talent. She has an incredible verbal ability. She delivers her things very well. She knows how to use the camera. Candace Owens is an undeniable talent. She's smart. She knows what she's doing. And so it was very clear that once she got a little bit of notoriety, the star was going to be on the rise. And she rose up through the ranks, got a lot of attention, especially in her efforts in kind of the Blexit movement, the idea that a lot of Black Americans would transfer their loyalty from the Democratic Party to the Republicans once they kind of understood the truth of how the Democratic Party used and abused Black Americans. You can kind of make your own judgments on whether that has been successful. Many people are predicting a huge shift over to Trump this election. I'm always skeptical because I've been told this is going to happen my entire life and it never really materializes. But maybe this will be the year. And if it does, I think you could probably correctly credit Owens with a lot of that shift. Now, Owens had made some interesting choices along her path. She had befriended people like Kanye West, and that's a big deal when Kanye West, one of the most powerful, massive entertainment stars in the world, comes out and says, I'm going to support Donald Trump. I'm leaving the Democratic Party. That's a pretty big win in anybody's book, right? Of course, Kanye West also said some things about the Jewish community that a lot of people found offensive. And so her defense of people like Kanye West or association with Kanye West already probably put Candace Owens kind of at odds with the Daily Wire, which obviously was founded by Ben Shapiro. And even though Ben Shapiro is not the manager, he's not the owner at this point, he still holds a lot of sway. Obviously, he has a great attachment, understandably, to making sure that the Jewish people are not attacked. That that is something that he cares deeply about for understandable reasons. He's Jewish, his family's Jewish, all of his relatives. This is something that you can kind of get here, and so obviously that's going to put them at loggerheads right away. Now, on top of that, you had kind of this building thing where it seemed like Candace Owens did not have the level of support for the nation of Israel that others on the network had. Now, that should be fine. Many people have differing opinions. That's kind of what news networks are about. And this is basically what I said in my original video. I'm on the Blaze. And the nice thing about being on the Blaze is at no point have I ever had anyone at the Blaze come up to me and say, hey, you can't say that. Hey, you're not allowed to disagree about that. In fact, I disagree with people all the time on the Blaze. And it's never been a problem. Sometimes we change each other's minds. Sometimes we don't. But we're still respectful of each other, and that those differing opinions are, I think, what a lot of people tune in to look like and hear. Now, obviously, we are still primarily a right-wing, primarily conservative network, and so most of our opinions tend to align along that point. And that's kind of where the Daily Wire, of course, is as well. And so you would expect there to be some level of unified opinion and then some level of differentiation. Depends on how much nuance or basically how much variability is allowed inside the organization. I'll talk about that more in a second. The point being is that this all came to head really with the October 7th attacks with Palestinians, terrorists attacking Israeli civilians. The response to that was many and varied, and I think that Owens basically had the approach of we probably should notice that there's a mistreatment of Palestinians by Israel that doesn't justify what Palestinian terrorists did is still horrific. But that this is something that there are two sides to this coin. There's a conversation to be had about the context here. That was not something that was appreciated very clearly by Ben Shapiro. Again, he was caught on a mic. He was caught. A video came up. He was addressing some people in an event, and he said that Candace Owens was disgraceful, and it was like he was ashamed to have her on her network, that kind of thing. And so obviously that kind of set up a collision course between Owens and Shapiro. You get the feeling talking to Candace Owens, and this is probably true of most media personalities, but you get a feeling talking to someone like Candace Owens that once somebody calls her disgraceful in public, there's going to be some problems, right? This is going to be an ongoing feud. And so you can kind of understand why that tension continued to build. And Owens got more and more vocal about her criticism towards the nation of Israel. Uh, and that really exacerbated her relationship with the people over at the Daily Wire, which is pretty clearly very supportive of the nation of Israel in general. Now, again, like I said in my original video, I think that there should be a variance of opinion. For instance, I think that Israel has the right to defend itself against terrorism. But I am someone who is an American nationalist. I think that the American nation is the one we should be worried about. I don't think that America should be sending money or military aid or really anything else to Israel. I wish Israel the best in its affairs, but I don't think that's really anything I should be involved in. It seems like there are some ways in which Israel treats its Palestinian populations roughly. It seems like the conduct of the war is questionable in many areas. I think you should be able to raise those questions without triggering any red flags because this is a foreign nation. It's not the United States, and your loyalty to that nation should have no bearing on your credibility as an American political commentator. We're Americans. We should primarily be concerned about the well-being of America and what it stands for and the people inside of it. Those kind of things. And I felt like you should be able to express that. Now, did Candace Owens eventually cross the line beyond those opinions? A lot of people say so. I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of Candace Owens these days. I don't know everything she's said and done. I've seen some of the things that she's been accused of saying. I mean, she has gone out there and said some off the wall things. She's talked about how the moon landing is not real and how the first lady of France is actually a man. So it sounds like Candace Owens kind of gets out on a limb on a number of things, and perhaps Israel and those kind of things is one of them. I really don't know. The point is, the Daily Wire is, of course, a private organization, and it has the right to hire and fire who it likes. And we can talk about free speech and all these things, but at the end of the day, people are going to have standards for what's said on their network. They are going to have standards for what is presented to them. Now, there is a little bit of, kind of out of both sides of your mouth because when this firestorm first came up, Jeremy Boring of the Daily Wire, kind of after everyone speculated on the feud, Jeremy Boring of the Daily Wire, he's actually the head. He's one of the people in charge. Ben is not. He's one of the hosts, even though he was a founding member. So he's someone with a little more authority, and he made it very clear that he would not be firing Candace Owens because of her positions on Palestine and the conflict between Palestine and Israel. And so there was this understanding that, okay, yeah, we might disagree with what she said, but and this was specifically what he said in the tweet was, as long as she doesn't violate the terms of her contract, we pay our hosts to have opinions, and she has opinions, and so she does that, and that's kind of the end of the story. So you kind of understand why people could be confused about Candace Owens being fired. Okay, well, she gave her opinion, and now she's losing her job. Again, there's always standards for what people say on a network, and you can understand their right to go ahead and let Owens go if that's their choice, but it does put you in a weird position. I mean, Daily Wire and many people on the right, to be fair, talk a lot about free speech and cancel culture. In fact, Daily Wire picked up Gina Carano, right, and put her in a movie because she was fired from Disney for viewpoint discrimination because she said something on Twitter that Disney didn't like, and therefore they she's like mildly right wing, and their tolerance for that is basically zero. And so that's why she got fired. And a lot of people who subscribe to these networks, these conservative outlets, do so because they expect to hear opinions that they wouldn't hear anywhere else, and they expect them to kind of be able to say what they think. And so there is some, I could see how people make the case for hypocrisy there. However, I think Owens knew what she was doing, right? Again, she had already created that tension had already been created, whether that was intentional by her or not previously, through her support by people like Kanye West. And once Ben Shapiro came out and I think kind of called her a disgrace or whatever, that was probably the last straw for her, right? The her pride was not going to allow her to stay on that network for much longer. And so she probably started pushing the envelope in a variety of different ways. Was it her intention to ultimately to get fired? Did she just want to prove a point? I don't really know. I don't know. So my point here is, like I said, I don't. This is not the main and interesting part of this. Candace Owens was obviously on her way out of Daily Wire one way or another. I think she had probably determined that, and they had probably determined that, and she was obviously pushing boundaries in ways that was going to end that. I think it's kind of up to networks whether they want to platform certain people, and then it will be up to conservative or right of center kind of media consumers as to whether they want to respond to that. Will people respond to the firing of Candace Owens by not listening to Daily Wire or canceling subscriptions? Maybe, I don't know. She was certainly a large host. She was certainly one of their big draws. Uh, was she the single pillar holding them up? Probably not. There are other big hosts there, of course, and they'll probably continue to draw people. They'll probably see some hit, but there is a question of credibility. Did they lose credibility by cutting a dissenting voice? Even if that voice kind of was making a kamikaze run, it seemed like to kind of exit that building. Either way, only time will tell. We'll just have to see.